So we're going to jump right in. This is a conversation on a YouTube channel called The Crucible. It's Andrew Wilson. He's actually pretty good. I really like Andrew. But the problem here is that rhetoric fails. Rhetoric fails for a very specific reason. And this exemplifies that reason. And it's not really one reason, right? There's a few things that happen in rhetoric that cause it to go astray, because rhetoric is based on logic, reason, and rationality. And the problem with that is that does not answer a question or solve a problem. And so I want to go through this video with you and show you what I see and where these failures are, in my opinion, and we'll see how this goes.
Donated $100. It is proven by every major institution that watching sex has the same effect as alcoholism, drug addiction on the brain. These
but we just did a shot.
Different from a pusher. All studies show this.
Robert, did you send me a DM, by the way? Thank you, Robert.
And like
alcohol is arguably bad.
We could talk about that.
I have no problem with
Everything
it.
in moderation.
So here's the thing.
Wait, everything in moderation?
Okay, so right off the bat, you notice he says everything in moderation. That's wrong. And that's why there's pushback there. So that's good. The pushback is good. But what you'll notice is that they don't really get the point of the pushback, right? And that this is going to be a recurring theme where something is said, the thesis or the statement is accepted, and they continue without any sort of change or acknowledgement, other than to say they agree. But saying you agree is a trick in many cases.
Those three things.
Oh, okay. All right. Go ahead, Andrew.
When you're talking about the rates of damage, sure, you can make an argument that alcoholism bad. There's no dispute here. But you know what I do with alcoholics? I don't say you should keep drinking. What you do is you go, hey, let's get you in rehab. Let's get you away from alcohol. Let's get you to stop doing this damaging thing. Your argument here, the reason it makes no sense is because you're saying the opposite. You're like, no, keep going and sucking those girl, because it makes you happy, and you white knight for it. Why you're doing it?
Well, what is
That's
the white
the
knight?
distinction. So saying to me, this idea of, but what about alcohol? Yeah, okay, alcohol can be bad, just like can be bad, but I'm not advocating over here that we don't treat and assist alcoholics. You're advocating, on the other hand, there's no problem with this behavior.
I disagree with you because.
Okay, so there's a number of problems here. One of them is that Andrew doesn't actually make the case that there's no problem with the behavior for the person engaging in the behavior, right? Oh, I enjoy this, and therefore. He could draw the line more clearly, right? He could say, alcoholics have the same attitude. This makes me feel good, therefore I do it, right? But he's not actually drawing the distinction, and that distinction is what they're going to use to effectively dismantle the rhetoric.
Because the alcoholics are the consumers. The porn stars are the creators of the beer, of the vodka, of the whiskey, and no one's coming at them. You're coming
They do come at them.
You're coming at the
They
people
get
that
sued constantly.
coming at porn stars is coming at.
Okay, so here's problem number 2. He makes a false statement, flat out false. Liquor manufacturers get sued all the time, right? Almost all those lawsuits get dismissed immediately because obviously they're not to blame, right? But the fact that they're come after means that he's wrong, right? He's already wrong. He's reasoning from a wrong position. So Andrew's right to point this out, but he doesn't notice that they don't understand that. And the problem is that with rhetoric, with logic, with reason, with rationality, when you start from a bad position, there's no flaw in the rhetoric, and so the point holds. It doesn't solve. Rhetoric doesn't correct for bad facts. Rhetoric is only about bad connections or poor logic or failed reasoning, right? Or broken rationalization. Rhetoric can't say anything about truth. It doesn't make truth claims. And, whatever. I mean, it's not designed to. It shouldn't try to, and it doesn't. Okay, fair. Like, we're all good here. Everything's consistent. Also, not going to solve a problem.
At Tito's. Coming at alcoholics is coming at consumers.
Bro,
you have a problem with them? Sure.
Dude,
because they're doing it too much, it's ruining their life. Sure.
If a guy, have you ever been at a bar late at night and you saw a bartender throw out a drunk? He said, "You've had too many, buddy."
That's a consumer, not a star.
Yeah, no. He's the distributor of the alcohol. He's the center point, the distribution center for the alcohol to the consumer.
You mean the bartender?
Yeah, and how many times as a bartender have you been there and he's been like, "Buddy, you're drunk and you need to get the out of here and go home and sleep it off."
That's talking to someone blowing up their OnlyFans.
And they say, "I don't want drunks in my fucking bar. Get the fuck out of here."
Well, first of all, you want drunks in your bar if you're running a...
Okay. So they're making so many mistakes, it's hard to keep track. He doesn't understand Andrew's point because he's just not smart. That's should be clear. If that wasn't clear, let me make it clear. He's not smart. Right? And engaging in people who aren't smart in a debate is not going to help necessarily unless you point out to the audience, this person's not smart. You have to do that explicitly because people like to cooperate and they'll give people the benefit of the doubt even when they shouldn't, right? And that's what's happening here. You're going to give him the benefit of the doubt because, oh, he probably needs a little help because he's not smart. Ironic, I know. But also that's exactly what people do. They do it all the time. We live in an affluent society. You can afford to be generous. They're being generous. See, he doesn't understand the point. And then when he does, he equates it to blowing up your OnlyFans account. But it's not the same. It's not even close. And that's where he's making a drastic mistake. Right. A bartender is taking responsibility for their clients. And then the other interlocutor here says you want drunks in your bar. Well, this is where the flat world comes in, right? Like, if the only thing you ever care about and the only factor to running a bar is making money, and if making money is only dependent upon people spending money in your bar, then that would be true. But we don't live in that world. If you're a bartender and you serve somebody who is drunk, the bar can get sued and you can get sued. And therefore, the fact that drunks will make you more money in the short term doesn't mean anything, because in the long term, you could lose actually everything. But this isn't accounted for, right? And that's the flat world thinking. Like, if you don't understand that, and a lot of people just don't understand that. Like, I agree. A lot of people do not understand what I just said. They don't understand the long-term implications of something. They don't understand the nuance of making money. Right? But making money now, if you make $1 billion and you lose it all next week, it's not in your best interest, right? Like that doesn't help you. It actually makes everything worse.
And the drunks are the crazy ones that think they're in a relationship with the OnlyFans girls for talking them too much.
Here's what's really
That's
interesting.
The drunks.
You ever notice that bartenders mostly don't drink? They mostly don't drink.
What? What do you mean? All my bartender friends are
bartenders
alcoholics.
mostly. There's been
bartenders.
study
Do you go to
after
bars?
study. Yeah, all the time.
So
there's been study after study about this.
Sure.
Okay, they mostly don't drink. It's really an interesting phenomenon because they see what being a f***ing drunk can do to you.
Yeah.
But bartenders will still be like, "Look, you should not be a drunk."
Well, they're legally responsible if you get a
should
DUI.
not. Well, they just don't want you to anyway, because I just don't think that they're horrible people because they tend bar. They say, "Look, if you're an alcoholic, you should be getting help. You should not."
Okay. So Andrew makes a great point, doesn't emphasize it enough, right? The bottom line is that there are lots of reasons why bartenders don't want you to get drunk. Lots of reasons. And there's actually more than one reason why bartenders don't tend to drink, right? If you drink and you're a bartender, the problem you're going to run into immediately is too much access to cheap or free liquor. And so bartenders that do drink, and I've known quite a few, don't stay bartenders very long. So that's sample bias. It plays a factor. I mean, he's not wrong. His argument's also correct. Like, two things can be true at the same time. And he's missing that. And he should probably add that in, by the way.
Not be doing that. There's nothing wrong with consuming a drink responsibly. Nothing at all. That's not what's going on here. What's going on here is you're like, look, this does an incredible amount of damage, and I just don't fucking care. That's the distinction.
They don't compare. They don't compare.
Okay. They don't compare. What's he basing this on? He's not basing it on anything, right? But this is a standard trick of rhetoric. Like, this is standard fare for rhetoric. Making a statement without evidence, without facts to back it up, for no apparent reason. There's no reason to say that. There's no reason to say they don't compare. First of all, what do you mean? He just drew the comparison. And this is why rhetoric doesn't work. If you draw a comparison that your interlocutor cannot understand, your rhetoric fails. It fails immediately. It's all done. It can't work anymore, right? If I put a quadratic math equation on the whiteboard and you don't understand quadratic equations, the fact that the quadratic equation is correct is irrelevant. And rhetoric is the same way. Like, if you're not good at rhetoric, it's not going to work. You're not going to rhetorically draw somebody out. Also, if you're not good with the facts of the thing you're talking about, rhetoric's going to fail immediately, because rhetoric doesn't make truth claims. It can't.
Because, again, the
Then
bar.
why'd you just compare them? If they don't compare. They don't compare, but I just compared
you
them.
didn't go with what I said. I said the bartender is the porn distributor, not the porn star.
Okay, the distributor.
Sorry. The bartender is.
Dude, why don't you run for office and change some shit? Because it seems like you guys just complain.
Yeah, I mean, that's not an argument.
No, I'm just
Okay, so you'll notice the switch here, right? So what happens here is that one of these guys realizes our arguments don't hold. Now, I'm not saying he realizes it consciously. He realizes it unconsciously. Nobody talks about the unconscious or the subconscious. They really should, because that's where all the gold is in human behavior. So he realizes this unconsciously and switches the argument. And Andrew, says that's not an argument, which is correct. But notice the switch in focus of the argument from the task at hand to the person on the other side of the table. This is typically where people talk about ad hominem attacks. There are ad hominem attacks, but mostly when people use that, they're wrong. They're just wrong. What they're complaining about is the switch in the target of the discussion. In other words, a change in frame. Right? So it went from frame of alcoholism versus porn, right, to the frame of the person that I'm talking to and their relationship to the world, right? That's what he's saying. Like, why don't you run for office? Well, you guys do a lot of complaining, right? But that's an unconscious outburst out of frustration. It recognizes the argument that they're making is incorrect. They drew the comparison. They don't understand the comparison that they drew, and now they're trapped. They're trapped in their own comparison. And Andrew very calmly points this out to them, but it's not going to have an effect on them.
generally asking you. You're an intelligent man.
We wake up.
I don't want to get shot.
Brian seems like
You don't want to
easy
get
going.
shot.
The chances are
I feel
literally
like you might
zero.
wake up like, what am I pissed about today? And I just think life is so much better when life is good. Live and let live. You want to suck it, suck it.
Why do you think?
You want to do this, do that.
Why do you think?
Okay. And so you can see right here the problem. Their entire attitude is encompassed in this do what you want, live however you like, don't worry about it, right? And that's hedonism. That's a form of hedonism. And that they've given away the farm. Like, you're not going to convince somebody who thinks that life is short and you should just live happy that there are consequences for actions and that those consequences should be accounted for. You're not going to argue your way out of that because they don't have a frame to understand it. And this is where the problem actually comes in. Like, they don't have a frame to understand that consequences exist and matter, and that what you do now affects what happens later. They're just compressing time, right? They're flattening the world, and that's their only concern, and they can't see past it. So all the rhetoric in the world isn't going to help them, but it is going to make them more upset, and the more upset they get, the more they feel they've been impinged upon, and so it feels like a moral wrong has been done to them, because their morals are: do what you like, do what feels good to you, do what you feel is best. He stated that pretty clearly. Life is so much more than that. It's all the pleasurable stuff. Oh, okay, right? That means if you impinge upon the pleasure that I'm having in the discussion, you're a bad person, necessarily. So how is rhetoric going to help? Because rhetoric, if used well, and Andrew uses it very well, it's one of the best for sure. How is rhetoric going to get them out of this? You're just going to impinge upon their happiness, and that's going to make them think that you're a bad person. They've admitted it.
That being chill about being a degenerate makes you less of a degenerate. Like this has always been amazing to me when people are like, "Look, man, the forest is burning down, things are going to shit. Man, I'm just chilling, smoking a blunt. What are you so mad about?"
Right. And Andrew does a reasonably good argument here, which is basically being chill or happy or non-judgmental is probably a better way to say it, about a situation that's not good is not a good. And that is correct. I don't like the way he did his example. I mean, it's a fine example. I think he could have come up with better examples. Also, there's a problem in the word degenerate, right? So there's calling something or someone degenerate has an implicit judgment in it. And so in, we'll say, more complete rhetorical form, you would prove that the behavior was negative, then you would label it. And the logical chain of this behavior is negative has not yet been established.
Because I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to
Brendan
smoke.
Schaub repeat the question back before answering. I don't think even Schaub's IQ is this low.
Diet Brendan Schaub?
Who's that? Is that me?
He's like a
And comedian.
No, I know who
UFC.
Brandon Schaub is, but who's
Probably
that?
Yeah, who's that?
Probably me.
Because Brandon Schaub is jacked. I'm kind of skinny right
I
now.
look
think
good.
maybe it's you.
Yeah.
Because you look maybe a little.
Okay, maybe. He's a stud.
But yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, just saying, like,
I don't get
yeah, just being like, well, because I'm really chill about the fact that everything is burning down, and you're saying we should probably do something about it. I don't think that that's a really good argument.
I just think you're going out the wrong.
Okay. So you can see some of the problems here, right? Like, the medium interrupts them. And then, of course, the person asking the question or making the statement, giving money to interrupt the flow of conversation is not very good at making themselves clear. And when that happens, I mean, this is why a formal debate with a moderator is really important. When the flow gets interrupted, it allows your brain time to relax, but you'll lose the thread, most likely. You'll lose the thread of what they were talking about. Andrew very cleverly and correctly goes right back into his argument and makes his argument again so that you don't lose the thread. This is obviously excellent. Again, I don't like his particular argument, but that's not important. The important part is that he does the right thing here. This is part of this is like Andrew's very, very, very good at this, but it doesn't work. In other words, it doesn't matter how good you are at rhetoric, it's going to fail.
wrong things.
I also think they're just like care too much.
You care too much about
Like
the wrong
there is a
thing.
thing is like caring too much because like you're gonna be dead in 50 years, bro. Who gives a fuck if a bunch of people are having
Have
sex
fun, man. We're all having
consensually?
fun.
Bro,
Try it.
you just got to get yours and go.
You gonna
Fuck everybody else.
You gonna make it to 90?
You did when we all
He's
did.
gonna have a heart attack.
You're not selfish.
Okay. So what we see here is, again, this recapitulation of you're taking this too seriously because life is short and therefore people should be able to do what they want and get what they want and be happy in the moment. And this is an old argument. Andrew, I don't think gives it its due attention. I would give that a lot more attention, right? Which is the more along the Jordan Peterson line of, do you think what you do doesn't matter, right? And face them with the nihilism of that. But then again, that's what I do best. So
At all?
Heart attack.
Do you think you're selfish at
Of
all?
course.
Yes,
Chief of sinners.
You gotta relax,
I'm not
buddy.
perfect
Hey,
at all.
let me take you to a
But
porn
that doesn't-
sex party with me.
But it's also bad to say.
Roth underscore PSA donated $100.
Yo, thank
I
you,
have a
Raph. Appreciate
child.
it.
Raised her well. She is a wonderful person. Engaged now and no OnlyFans in her past or future.
Okay.
I could not be more proud as a father. Educate. Do not promote horrid behavior.
Good job, Raph. But all
Yeah,
I'm
great job.
saying is like,
Great job.
There's such a thing, right? It's justified and righteous anger. When things get so fucking out of hand and people are just like, look, fuck it. Let this horrible things that are happening just take it. And it's like, you know what ends up happening? What ends up happening is riots in the UK as people lose their fucking minds because they go to a boiling point. Guys like me, we're the stopgap. We're the ones who are like, before we get to this crazy boiling point,
Bro,
let's interject some logic and reason.
Let me ask you a
this.
okay. I don't like this argument. It's a bridge too far. He's not making the connection at all. Right? And I don't think making the connection would work, but also this is not necessarily good form, right? To jump that far ahead to look at riots in the UK and that's why porn is bad. Like that, you're not making the case at that point. You're definitely not making the case at that point. And so I don't find that helpful. It's possible that some people do, but he's not wrong at all, right? But this is another failure of rhetoric. It's too easy to use good rhetorical arguments that don't connect to the person you're speaking to. And then, unfortunately, he goes off on the, guys like me or the righteous good guys. Yes, that's true. Also, don't make a claim like that. There should be no need to. And if you need to make that claim, there's a problem. Right? That should be self-evident in your activities. It's not something that needs to be stated.
Question. I hang out with stars, right? How annoying would I be if every minute I preach to them about how they're degenerates and need to find God and or whatever and change their job, right? I'm not here to judge you, right? Unless you're doing something extremely f***ed up, like we discussed, CP, whatever, any of that
Yeah, but
shit.
you have
The
a
obvious-
vested interest in capitalizing on it.
I have a vested interest in capitalizing on what? Hanging out with
on extreme degeneracy, right? Like that's what your interest is. Or
This is it too. You got
Okay. Again, this is another missed opportunity. Okay. He said, how annoying would I be if I preached? No one said you had to preach. Also, no one said you had to hang out with porn stars. Lost opportunity for good rhetoric. All right. Like you want to, in rhetoric, you want to point out to the other person where they're logically inconsistent. Right. That doesn't happen here. Instead, Andrew gets sucked into the guy's argument. And look, I'm not saying that sometimes that isn't a good tactic. I'm not saying that what he's doing is wrong. I'm saying that there's a lost opportunity here to say you don't have to preach. You also don't have to hang out with them. Right? And the vested interest argument is a decent argument, but also irrelevant. Like whether you have a vested interest in hanging out with degenerates, porn stars or bad people in general, has nothing to do with whether or not you ought or should hang out with them. Nothing. There's no overlap. You can have a vested interest, not have a vested interest, you still shouldn't do it, right? Your interest should not determine everything that you do. And again, these two have already proven that their interest in the moment determines everything, all the goodness, determines everything. That, that's hedonistic, it's fatalistic, it's nihilistic. That'd be where I go with it.
Guys capitalize on that too.
The entirety of the
entire
we have
this-
the opposite. The opposite.
But you
we have a
talk
vested
to-
interest in stopping it.
Right, but you bring them on. As if
In
you're going to
order-
change them.
Yeah, do you think that I have not gotten hundreds of DMs from different women who say, "Man, thank you so much. That actually helped a lot"? Because I have.
Bro, that's not a brag. Like, if you're being like, I got women DMing me how good of a guy I am, like, wow.
They're not DMing me pictures of their dude. They're DMing me, "Thank you for the conversation."
Oh, wow.
Oh man, I really went. I just some fucking.
Okay. This is another flat world problem, right? So Andrew's talking about the quality of the DMs he's getting from these women and, linking that, although again, poorly, to the advantage to society, right? Which is really what this is about. What's the advantage to society, to those women and to society? And all the men they won't be entrancing, right? Is to make that argument. The idea that all DMs are equal, and if you get 100 DMs that are, mean to you and 100 DMs that are kind to you, that somehow those are equal, that's flat world, right? And they're stuck in a flat world. They're stuck in a hedonistic flat world. And it's dangerous, right? They're not actually living in an enchanted world at all. They're unable to see very simple, straightforward things that, everybody should be able to see.
Degenerate exploitative shit right there.
I
Isn't
just don't brag about the people that DM me.
You're married. Brian,
What's up?
have you slept with girls that have OnlyFans?
Never.
Really?
Never slept with a girl who has an OnlyFans.
You wouldn't?
No. I mean, I think I've said before, at this point, it's pretty much a strong no. I have made previous statements because people dig it up and be like, well, you said this previously. So what I have said previously is, and this is, I don't know the last time I said this, but so long as she hasn't done boy-girl content. But then I started learning more about the nature
But not to
of the
date,
OF
to
stuff.
sleep with. I'm talking.
Okay. So a number of things come up here right away. Again, they switch the target of the argument, right? Away from the general topic of porn and porn stars and right into the personal, right? Now, this is absolutely not a personal attack of any kind, right? But it is a switch in the frame, and that's important to notice, right? They're trying to justify their individual behavior as individuals by roping other individuals into their frame of doing what you want in the moment is okay. That's what they're trying to do. It's not a personal attack, right? It also fails, which is even more amusing. The argument that what I've said in the past, these are foolish arguments. What you should say is, I may have said things publicly in the past, but I have since changed my mind. That's what people should be saying. Nassim Taleb goes over this. Read all his books. His books are great. Multiple times. Like, the smart person is the one that changes their mind, not the one that never changes their mind. Obviously.
Oh, even if a girl's done any sort of like content with another man, I don't care how attractive she is, I would not have
Is
sex
it
with
because
her.
it's out there? Or do you care if she fucked other men as long as it's not documented? Do you want a virgin, or are you okay with
I'll date a woman who's not a virgin, but there is an issue if she's done content that's out
That's
there.
what I'm asking. You're okay with her having
date.
it.
But so no, I've never slept or hooked up or dated.
It's a lot harder these days to meet a girl not on it.
Yeah, well, I don't date content
Yeah, it is.
creators. I don't date content creators.
Something I'm trying to help
begin with.
avoid.
You've been hanging.
Okay. So, very subtle, probably didn't notice. The equation is trying to be drawn that there's no difference between having sex in private and having sex in public. Now, I don't know why everyone doesn't understand this. The fact that you have to apply a qualifier, public versus private, should be a hint that they're not the same. All right. Things that are done publicly are not the same as things that are done privately. This is so true in law that it is a fundamental basis for law. I agree that the line is often skirted and muddied in legalese, we'll say, but actually, particularly in the US, it's very clear what you do on your private property in your house is a very different in terms of legal standard than what you do in public. That has always been the case. And there's a gray area of what you do on your property, right? Because what you do on your property in view of people, right? Or what you do on your property that affects other properties, right? Is different from what you do in your house. Also, what you do in your house can be illegal to the point where people can and should interfere if people can figure it out, right? In other words, if what you do in private has an impact on the public that they notice, then the law applies again, right? But in general, there's lots of things, there's myriad of things that done in public are illegal and done in private aren't illegal, even if people know about it. This distinction is not made, nor is it sort of emphasized here, which I find interesting because this is, part of where rhetoric fails. I mean, again, rhetoric is great. I enjoy a good rhetorical argument, right? But you have to be complete and you have to know where the other side is. You can't start with this overweight. You get one person excellent at rhetoric and everybody else is not, right? Because they're not able to get down to the layer that these other people are at, which means they just get confused, right? And that's more the issue.
Hanging out, Andrew, too much. It's a lot of fun.
No, I date like normal, quote unquote, normal.
Civilians.
Girls who have sex for free.
Well, so also I don't even.
They're fucking interns in this prostitution.
I don't even.
The difference is also think that's bad.
I don't even
What,
deal.
girls who have sex for free?
Girls who are
Okay. There's a few problems here. Again, this frame of consumerism, right? Girls who have sex for free. I don't know what are you saying prostitution should be? Like, this is completely backwards, right? In consumerism, prostitution should be legal. And actually, girls who have sex for free should not be legal. But sorry, just the way logic works, right? And that's how you know it's a bad frame, right? Because it produces a perverse result. Right? The starting axiom of consumerism is always wrong because consumerism always produces perverse results that don't manifest. And if the perverse result, the way you know a perverse result is one way is it doesn't manifest, right? Oh, obviously, consumerism isn't at play because bartenders throw drunks out of bars, right? Therefore, consumerism frame is wrong because that observably doesn't happen reliably enough to be a thing. Right? Obviously, paying for sex should be legal in a consumerist society, and it should be illegal to give it away. That's true. That would be logically consistent. It's not. Consumerism is wrong. Not that hard, really. I don't. And again, like all these little misses make the opposing side think they're winning the rhetorical argument because their rhetoric has not been at all pushed back on these little things. And so they're still in their frame saying, my frame is still logically consistent, even under the rules of rhetoric. And that's correct. Right? But it hasn't been pushed back on.
are having sex outside of wedlock.
But you did that.
Yeah. So if I murdered people and then told you people was bad, people would still be bad even if I did
I
it.
agree, but I'd be like, I don't want to hear it from you. It's like a fat person telling me to lose weight.
Would he be wrong? Would he be wrong? No, but
Right. And so here you have this idea of good versus bad. And it's not well exemplified because, again, the interlocutors can't engage with good versus bad because they're not in a frame of good and bad. They're stuck in the rhetorical frame with a time frame of 0 that says what I like is good, because they don't have a standard for bad. They've pushed it out of their mind. This is part of the flat world. So it's important to keep in mind that that's what's happening here.
I hear it from you. It doesn't matter what you want to hear. What matters is what is true.
The
One sec.
FKs is the same the used and all those that looked away when millions are killed. Also, Brian, I messaged on next Twitter.
thank
Let
you,
me
Tanner.
know if
He
I
has
should
chatters,
DM
Robert.
otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, really quick.
It's like,
Yeah.
you would think-
OnlyFans is a slippery slope to.
By the way,
Got
you
it.
would think for
I mean,
sure.
isn't that what your boy just said?
Yeah, I
The
don't,
same attitude. I don't agree with that.
I don't
We
even
can all
understand
agree.
what the comment
That's
was.
insane.
Yeah,
First
that's
of all.
But
like
the
Okay. I don't agree with that. I don't understand what the comment is. The problem is, I really do like Andrew, but he made this similar leap earlier in the conversation. Similar leap about the UK. It's a similar jump, actually. The I don't care is important, right? And it wasn't dealt with when it was brought up. I don't care. Because the reason why they say, why do you care? Is because they don't want judgment. But you have to understand that that's their frame. And you have to deal with their stuff in their frame, in rhetoric. Otherwise, the rhetoric is going to fail. It's not that you're not going to convince them. It's far, far worse. You're going to force them. You're going to force them to double down and feel self-righteous at the end of the conversation. Now, that's not to say that in 5 years or 10 years, or maybe only 6 months, they'll figure it out. But that's not common. And it doesn't bode well for the audience because signals matter. So if I make an incorrect argument, this happens all the time online. You see it constantly. If I make an incorrect argument, but I'm confident about it, and people already agree with my argument, they think I did well. That's what they think, right? They very much go off the signals of the people they're looking at. They have to. You don't really have a choice. That's part of being enchanted, right? You're enchanted by the confidence of the other person. You're enchanted by their demeanor. You're enchanted by whether or not they think that they have failed or made a mistake. And you'll notice these guys are fully confident. You can make an argument. I don't know if you can see this. I can certainly see it. Andrew is far more confident in his arguments than these two. But it doesn't matter, right? Because most people can't even see that. But the fact of the matter is they are never taking a hit for when they're wrong, ever. And they're not being held to, which is the bigger problem. Like, you should hold them to when they're wrong, pointing it out. We have a big problem with that nowadays. I don't know why.
idea here.
First of all, he's
I think some of the best advocates against and who are the most persuasive against OnlyFans were women who were on OnlyFans. Some of the most persuasive advocates against prostitution were women who were
So
prostitutes.
guess who's the best
To
advocates
say-
against Starbucks? Former employees, bro. Right?
Yeah.
It's like in every industry, you're gonna have people who come out
Yeah,
and be
but
like,
the
this shit
reason
sucks.
they're convincing is because
Child star Nickelodeon.
they can shed light on things that the public does not know about.
Okay. The problem with this is the argument is not held well. The fact that people can advocate against something better if they've been involved in it, that point is not exemplified well. It's also irrelevant. Right? It doesn't matter if you've been involved in OnlyFans. Morally wrong, irrespective of whether or not you've been involved. And I understand that that argument is hard, if not impossible, to make rhetorically. I don't think it's impossible, but it could be impossible. But also, that's the correct argument to make. And that is not the argument being made, right? Andrew is trying to justify using appeals that he thinks these two will understand. And of course, they can't because they're in a flat world. And so when you give them an example, they're going to give you an equivalent example that either confirms your example and waters it down to the point where it's meaningless, or counteracts your example in their worldview. And that maintains their confidence.
There's bad everywhere.
To say though that we can't get great insight about serial killers from serial killers is insane. To say because Andrew, you had sex before marriage, that somehow that means you can't talk about why you shouldn't have sex outside of marriage. That's an insane take. That makes no sense.
But why can't you have sex before marriage? Well, what is getting? Can you imagine buying a car without test driving it?
Well, so
that's insane, bro.
You're not
that's insane
to be like test driving a.
Well, I'm test driving.
Yes.
Okay, lots of problems here. There are lots of things you buy without testing them first. Houses. You haven't lived in the house, can't live in the house before you buy it. It's impossible. Can't be done. Lots of people buy cars without test driving them first. Lots of people. Sorry, he's just wrong. And again, it's when people say something wrong, you have to push back immediately and say, no, bro, you're wrong. You don't have to push the issue past that, maybe, but also you have to tell them that your statement is incorrect. And you have to give them counterexamples. And you have to explain to them the fact that you can come up with an example does not mean you're right. It means that there are exceptions in the world, that we live in an imperfect world. That would be a better line of argumentation here.
Everything.
Guess what?
If sex doesn't work, it doesn't work.
For most of human history, the reason that men wanted women who had a low body count, no body count, in fact, virgins, is because it assured paternity, right? You couldn't test drive it. Because
right, I also didn't leave my zip code.
You didn't need to test drive it because, as it turns out, basically all dicks fit into all. Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
No, there's a thing called sexual chemistry, bro. I've had plenty of girls that I just don't vibe with sexually that I actually loved.
Oh, you know,
and then I'm like, I'm trying to find a girl that hits all the buttons.
Yeah,
for
but
me.
you know what's really funny about that, right? If you marry,
do you like butt
if
stuff?
you marry as a virgin and you are a virgin, right? Your comparison level goes way down. What's your comparison for what bad sex?
Right. So one method of pushback here that wasn't taken was he's trying to tick all the boxes. He's trying to find the perfect woman. There is no perfect person, and if there was, that would be useless to you because you change over time. And as the result of being with somebody, you'll change. So trying to get it right up front is ridiculous. That is a better line of argumentation. However, Andrew, again, tries to stay in their frame. And again, he's missing their frame. You got to look low, real low, real flat.
Even is.
Well, that's the worst example of being like, I like vanilla ice cream because I've never tried any of the other flavors. Bro.
If every other form of ice cream was poison, it would be a great example.
What's poisonous about having sex and finding out what you like sexually?
Let's go.
Let me ask you a question. Let me ask you. I don't mean to
shotgun them.
Let me ask you a question.
One point at a time. Don't shotgun the points. One at a time. Let's
have a question for you.
And you can hold the question. I'll answer it. All right. Well, there's two of you yelling at me, right?
I haven't said shit in months.
Don't cry.
I'm trying not to.
You spoke.
So anyway, back to this. Yes, here's what we see with people who are virgins who get married. It lasts way longer than people who aren't virgins who get married, and their sexual satisfaction rates that they report are much higher. The reason for this, the scientific reason for this, is because if you have a sample size which is lower, there's nothing to compare it to.
Right, but that's
for
not
all
a good
you
argument.
know, that is the most amazing sex they could ever have from their perspective. If that's good for society, great.
But
I don't like the scientific appeal. I use scientific appeals. Finally, we mention what's good for society, right? Fail to mention what's good for both parties. All right, it's just not emphasized. It's like, it's not, for all you know, this could be the best sex they could ever have. That is a certainty, right? The mother that you have is the best mother you could ever have, because you can only have one. So in any case, also the worst mother you could ever have. I'm just saying, right? It's not, the comparison's not important because it can't be made, which is a better way to say that, in my opinion. I'm not suggesting that he should have said it that way. And because the comparison can't be made, the sanctity, right, the reverence is intact. And that's the only way that can happen. And that's an important point that is not being emphasized here.
So
Fine, but science
you hold that
doesn't.
for anything.
But science doesn't.
Alex underscore
I'm going to be a
Myers
shitty dad,
donated
but if he never meets other
$100.
parents, he'll think I'm
I'm
good.
with Andrew, but the best
One sec,
point
one
you
sec.
two have made was if you make something illegal, you make it more enticing. Autobar next.
Yeah, I
Speed
mean,
limit, I would be a safer driver knowing that it's up to my judgment.
Thank you, Alex.
Let's
Thank
just
you.
say
There's another one coming in. There's another one coming in, and I'll pause it for a few minutes to let you
All right.
guys
Yeah,
get through
let
it
him answer.
fully.
Thank you, Alex.
For sure.
Yeah.
We're turning some of your fans. You see that?
Appreciate
Okay. The best point they've made was that if you have something illegal, you make it more enticing. That's categorically false. I'm just gonna tell you. It doesn't make it more enticing. The Autobahn has lots of fatal accidents, way above other highways. Just saying.
it, Alex. We have
I
another
said
one
that.
coming in from Sons of Liberty. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. You two and I are different men to the core. Seems your morality rests on the seven deadly. Some men view sex as sacred and porn as degeneracy. The hat guy's dad was harsh and rarely said he loved him. Wait, where'd that go?
That's a pretty, I don't care. My dad loves me. I'm close with my
My
dad.
dad loves me too. Shout out
Yeah.
to Tom.
All right.
Love you, Dad.
Thank you, Sons of Liberty. I'm going to pause the TTS temporarily just so you guys can.
I think my argument to you is, dude, while sure you can have all the scientific data to back that up, but I think being a human being to me is like I don't want to commit to something without knowing what's out there, right? Like I don't eat only one type of food. I explore it all. Shit I like, shit I don't like. Guess what? I like fucking girls in the butt. If I don't know my girl likes it in the butt, that's never gonna work. Guess what? If my girl is vegan, we're never gonna work either, right? So there's certain things I need to know before I go, you're my girl forever. Right? You marry forever, right?
So if your kid doesn't, or if your woman doesn't,
Okay. Okay. This is where there's a perfect opportunity to talk about sacrifice. What are you willing to sacrifice to be with somebody or to have something, right? And it might be looks, it might be personality, it might be smile, it might be your eyes, it could be any number of things. Smile and eyes are not personality or looks, by the way. Think about that for a while. And this idea of trade-off, which I, of course, have a video about, which I'll post here. This idea of cost is important, and they're ignoring it. And I don't think it should be ignored. I mean, the fact that you can have multiple foods is the result of affluence. The fact that you could sample multiple women is also the result of affluence. Affluence is not good for people. Not everybody who becomes affluent will become corrupted or anything like that, but affluence is not good for people.
doesn't have kids, you wouldn't know if you wanted to have kids with her.
If my woman, I'm sorry.
If
what
your
is it?
woman didn't have kids, you wouldn't know if you wanted to have kids with her.
What,
If your woman didn't have kids, you wouldn't know if you wanted to have kids with her. Is that correct?
if I don't have kids with her,
Yes.
So what-
And if she doesn't have kids, you would have nothing to sample it against. So then why would you have kids with her?
I think that's a terrible way to look
I
at
don't
life.
understand that argument. I just don't want kids.
So let's try this again.
Yeah.
Okay. Again, he doesn't understand the argument. Rhetoric fails again. It fails again. He doesn't understand the argument. He doesn't understand the argument because he's already gotten around the argument by saying he doesn't want to have kids. Okay, right. But the real argument here is that there are different classes of things in the world. Now, for flat worlders, there aren't. Right? And this is the problem. In their flat world, there are not different classes of things. There are not things that you can't know ahead of time, for example. Like that doesn't exist in their world, obviously. Also, in everybody else's world, that does exist. So that's a problem right there. But Andrew fails to recognize this, and fair. Like, this is not an easy thing to see in people. We don't want to believe that their limitations are as obvious as they are, right? These two are not smart. They're just not smart. Lots of people aren't smart. As a colleague of mine once said and got roundly laughed at for, half the people are below the half point of the bell curve. That's correct. In other words, half the people are below average intelligence. Half the people are below average, and half, right, below average. Right. That's important to know. And I don't think, that's really being accounted for by anybody. This is an Andrew problem. Like, everybody seems to forget there's lots of stupid people in the world. There are as many stupid people in the world as there are smart people in the world.
Yeah, explain it to me. It's just confusing me.
You're
Sorry.
saying I must you to know if we're sexually compatible and we have blah, 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 blah. Well, then why shouldn't you go with a chick who has kids? That way you can make sure she's a good mother.
No, because I don't need a mother. I'm not looking for a mother.
But a good mother for your kids.
Yeah, but I find that in her other personality types. But
Wait. You mean you can know that
you can't know if someone has sucked a dick until she sucks it.
Wait.
No matter how much my girlfriend's like, ooh, baby, look at me.
You can't know she's going to be a good mother for your kids unless she already has kids.
Yeah, I can.
How?
Because she can take care of herself, her life, everything around her.
Doesn't
how she treats her family.
That doesn't prove that she would be a good mother any more than it would prove.
Right.
First of all, I don't believe for a second, that you don't know if you have sexual chemistry with a woman until you've slept with her, because the reason you want to sleep with her is because you have sexual chemistry.
So here's the problem. Like, again, these guys can't understand the logic. They can't rationalize, and they're not reasonable. And when they're faced with a situation that they're wrong in, clearly, they can't process it. They just can't process it. And so they can't engage in the rhetoric from that point. And that's what you're seeing here. You can't engage in the rhetorical process at all.
Oh, the one I sleep with her is because I'm horny, dude.
Have
you met
I disagree. I disagree.
I can
So
fuck
you just
a
everything
doorknob.
you see?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's the idea.
We didn't grow up gorgeous like you, dude.
That's the idea.
Okay, here's the problem again, right? So Andrew finds this funny. I also kind of find it funny. But he's not making a case. Like, he's not making a moral argument for why you shouldn't do that, which is really the issue here. The issue is, why shouldn't you do that? Why shouldn't promiscuity be the rule? Why shouldn't you know things before you engage in them long term or something, right? But the time frame has never been brought up. And that's really important. Like, everyone's living in a flat time world here, because rhetoric doesn't have to account for time. It should, right? A good rhetorical argument will, when appropriate, make an appeal to a long-term cost or trade-off. That's not being done here, right? And that I would have to say is a failure of the rhetoric, right? Or the Andrew, in this case, engaging in the rhetoric, is he really needs to make that case and make it clearly and make it every time, very consistently. Because if you don't make a point consistently, if you don't repeat it, people will forget it.
So if you see it, fuck it.
You're a handsome guy.
If I drink 6 shots of tequila, I'll literally sleep with anyone with a heartbeat at the end of the night, right? It's better than my
So
hand.
what I'm saying is, if you can create indicators for why a woman X would be a great mother, even if she doesn't have kids,
so
for you to
got-
make
so
a
what'd you do,
comparison,
slip your girl's bananas?
Let me finish. You can find indicators for sexual compatibility outside of sex. That argument makes no sense.
What? What are the sexual indicators until
Well, let's start with this. Let's start with the idea that if you have nothing to compare it to, you're a virgin, she's a virgin, it's going to be the best sex she ever had. No matter what, it's the only sex she's
Actually,
ever
it's
had.
the worst
can I
sex
chime
ever.
in?
Now,
One
hang on.
Bro,
Okay. So again, you'll notice finally Andrew gets around to the argument of, if you've never had sex, the first person you have sex with is the best sex you've ever had, technically. Right. But then you'll notice his interlocutor is unable to engage. He just flat out denies that is true. Why does he do this? It's hindsight bias, or a form of hindsight bias, where he thinks he can know the thing after the fact, and that's the same as knowing it before it happens. This is the compression of time. This is the flattening of the world. That's part of what's happening. People flatten the world because they can't understand the world they're in, because they don't have the cognitive capacity to do so. That's most people. We all flatten something about the world, or most things about the world. And he's unable to engage in the rhetoric. He's still unable to engage. Andrew doesn't, maybe he doesn't have a way to deal with this, and like fair. He doesn't deal with the fact that they just fundamentally disagree about facts of the world. And if you fundamentally disagree about facts of the world, rhetoric is pointless. It's a waste of time. And it's harmful when you do it publicly. Because again, the side that agrees with these two is going to agree with them. And the side that agrees with Andrew is going to agree with Andrew.
You can't possibly,
Bro,
I love
let
you,
me
but you
finish.
can't be defending being a virgin.
First, let's move on to the next
I'll
thing.
defend being a virgin too.
Listen, you can't defend being a virgin. Why not? Where's the, when people make a claim, you should force them to back up that claim or take it back. In a debate, you should always do that. Always. This is why proper debate format is really important. This is not proper debate format. And so all of the tools that would be there normally and all of the rules that would constrain the discussion so that minds can be changed, because the debate format is designed to change minds. And it can do that if you follow the format. If you follow the rules, it'll do that. It does it all the time, actually. It's the best way to do it. It's not a great outcome, right? Not a lot of people get changed by a formal debate, but people do get changed by a formal debate. You know what they don't get changed by? All the things people call debates that aren't debates, that don't follow the moderator interlocutor format with rules, right? Those don't work at all, ever, but they do make things worse pretty reliably. That's the problem. And no one likes this idea because they don't like rules and structure and hierarchy to begin with. So the idea that you should have a format for a debate, and a debate should only be used when you're talking about something that follows that format, is already a problem for them. This is why we can't have nice things.
Yeah, not only that, but let's move on.
You're not. Yeah.
Let's move on to the next idea.
Some of these commenters
next
are
idea.
virgins for sure.
Oh wait,
Easily.
really hot woman who I'm dating right now, who I'm sexually charged up about. I'm just certain that we're not going to have any sexual chemistry at all, even though people who've waited to have sex for months with each other say it's some of the best sex that they've ever had because they waited.
I
Right,
get
and then
stage fright
sometimes
at that point.
I've been with
much
girls
pressure.
that I thought were gonna be great in bed, and they're not. And then you go, you know what? I need those pieces in my life, so I'm sorry. Like I
Wait,
don't.
can't you teach a girl? You can't teach a girl how to be good in bed.
You teach a girl
there's
what?
that six,
How to
there's that
suck a
six
dick. What am
10
I, gay?
That you have the best
How
sex
would that
with.
be gay to tell
Well,
her?
this is how you suck a girl.
No, you don't show her.
We all have that
Sorry,
girl
you don't
that we
bust out
don't
a banana.
vibe with.
Make her
You
practice.
don't bust out
No,
the
no, no.
banana.
On who?
You.
Hey, back when you were doing.
What do you mean,
words.
you?
Use your
What?
words.
I prefer someone
we
that
don't
shows
fuck our
up knowing how to
daughters,
play
boys,
the
all right?
game.
Did a woman get really, really good at having sex by having less or more sex?
Yeah, with
Absolutely.
So they had more sex. Why can't they just have the more sex with you?
Because I suck at sex, and I'm waiting for you to show up already good with guys that are better than me, bro.
So wait, you need guys to
Yeah.
chick to
Yes.
make sure that she's good enough to
Me,
you.
before me.
Okay then. Wild position.
And that's the problem. It is a wild position. I agree. Also, you didn't prove your point. What you did do was allow them to reestablish that hierarchy is important and that hierarchy works in that way. But that's not the way hierarchy should be working, right? Which is how we got here, right? We've got a bunch of people telling other people what to do and setting the way, and then everybody's following that way without any consideration for virtues and values or what's good long term or what the trade-offs and costs are. That's really the issue here. But that issue wasn't discussed. And it's not that that issue isn't part of rhetoric. It's that that issue wasn't brought up. And part of that, I maintain, is because it didn't follow debate format. It didn't have a proper telos to begin with. And debates state their telos up front. This is position A, and it's stated up front. This is position B, and it's stated up front. And the moderator makes sure the rules are followed, and there's certain rules, right? And that's how it's done. Now, I don't like timed debates. I don't think it's necessary to have timed debates, but having rules and moderators to change people's mind is required. It is required, because if you don't have that third perspective of the moderator and the rules to appeal to, that's a neutral perspective. Technically, it's a neutral perspective, because the rules and the moderator don't know or care about the arguments being made. They're not agents in the world. They don't have a way to do that. The moderator is an agent whose telos is to make sure the format and the rules are followed. Right? So they're up here in the argument, right? The two interlocutors are down here in the argument, and that gives you, the viewer, the listener, right, a way to trust the arguments and then compare them within a container that's well understood. When you don't have that container, and when you don't have that trust, debates are worthless. Conversations are worthless, in fact. All conversation is worthless. You'll get a good feeling from it. It may even last a little while. You may get something out of it. You may have an epiphany, but you haven't been convinced. You've been enchanted. I get that. But enchantment is banal and common. It's not exciting. What you really want is to have a way to interface with a discussion, right? In this case, a debate, where there's a level of trust that you can use to establish something important. Without that format, without those agreements by the participants, and without a moderator to help it all go smoothly, you cannot have that. All you can have is enchantment. Enchantment isn't necessarily bad. So sometimes this will work out quite well. But most of the time it won't.